All right, man, welcome to another edition of the Inner Sanctum, man, with your boy Big L. We got the homie, Bishop Rick Wallace, with us today, man. We're going to continue the discussion on Dr. Claude Anderson's classic Black Labor, White Wealth. As I stated the last show, the reason and the purpose behind this book is for us to be able to reach people who normally wouldn't pick the book up, who may not have time to sit back and read it, whatever the case may be. Sometimes folk want to hear different things in a different voice. So what we're going to do today is we're just going to kind of chop up chapter 1. But before I dig into chapter 1, I wanted to hear Rick's perspective, man, on Dr. Claude, because the first video, Rick, I kind of painted a little bit of a background on Dr. Claude, but I spent more time talking about what he's had, the effect he's had on my life, and how I've come to grow and have such an admiration for that brother because of the many sacrifices that he's made, man. So share your thoughts with the people, man, on Dr. Claude. What do you think about that brother?
Man, this may come across as somewhat of an exaggerated, it may come across as somewhat of an exaggerated assessment, but I actually believe that from an from a perspective of impact, from a perspective of knowledge, from a perspective of passion and commitment, I think that he is the single most influential person in the Black movement, simply because he addresses every aspect of the struggle we have. He presents not only the issue and the problem, but he also presents the historical context. Not only does he present the historical context, but he also comes in and shows the progressive movement and the actual systemic issues that flow from that. Then he does what very few people do. He offers a viable economic and political, social, and educational or academic solution. And so what he does with that is that's what makes him to me. And I think when we first met, I think we got real excited when we came across each other and we began to talk. One of the first things I mentioned to you was Dr. Claude Anderson, and you lit up.
Yeah.
And I believe that we consider ourselves disciples of Dr. Claude Anderson. This brother is passing down a life legacy of hard work to young brothers like ourselves. And I think that it's our responsibility to pick up the baton and do him some justice.
Yeah. And you know what's good about Dr. Claude, man, is that I've been listening to this brother, man, probably for the past year. All his interviews, all of his lectures that he's presented. The one thing that I like about people, Rick, is consistency, man. If you are somebody who is incredibly consistent, I can ride with you. I can, have your back. And that consistency doesn't always have to be something that's incredibly positive. But if there's people who I know who are always going to be the same, no matter how I see them, that tells me right there that they truly believe in what they're giving out. And what you notice about Dr. Claude is Dr. Claude continuously says the same thing in the same manner, but he always says it without any malice or intent to harm others, no matter who it be. Because this brother doesn't pull any punches when it comes to speaking about black folk or when it comes to speaking about white folk. He don't hold anything back. And I think that's one of the things as we begin to dialogue even further with this brother, man, is that I love this brother's consistency. I love his sincerity. And the more important thing that I love the fact that he loves his people. He makes it clear, I love my people. and everything that he does is for the love of his people. So when we begin to come together and talk about doing something and working together in the inner sanctum, that's one of the things that all of us share. All the brothers who are in the inner sanctum share that same unadulterated quality, is our unadulterated love for Black people and the willingness to sacrifice and do whatever we need to do and have to do for our people. So as we go further in the conversation, man, today what I wanted to deal with is I wanted to give people the background on where we stand with Dr. Claude and how we got to be in this aspect. So, brother, today we're going to dig right into chapter 1, man. And what I did when I was reading the book, Rick, I had a bunch of notes and highlights and red ink and all over, you know what I mean, the book. So what I did last episode is I highlighted and I spoke on and, you know, expounds on some of the things that I have highlighted in the book. So I think that's probably the easiest route without us getting caught up in reading every last jot and tittle within the book.
Right.
I think that might be a little difficult. So, man, chapter 1 is dealing with the nature of the problem. Rick, that is one of the big issues with Black folks today when we begin to examine how we're in this particular situation, how we have gotten here, why we're here, is that many of us don't understand the nature of the problem in regards to how Black folks have gotten here. See, what the media has been so smooth with doing, and some of our so-called civil rights leaders, they've been so good at muddying and confusing and mixing the various issues to the point that when young Black people begin to decide on how to fight against these particular problems, they have no idea where to start at. They're taking stabs in the dark, man. So what Dr. Claude does, and this particular part of the book, it's an activist, a civil rights activist who's being interviewed by a particular media person. It doesn't say exactly who the media person is, but it highlights an exchange between them. And this is what it says right here. The activist cocked his head in a voice mixed with anger and indignation after he was asked by the reporter. The reporter asked him, why have they rioted and destroyed their own neighborhoods? What is the problem? The civil rights leader responds, surely the gains of the civil rights movement in the 60s were important, but they turned out to be superficial and largely symbolic. We can sit at lunch counters, vote, but economically, civil rights gains took more from us than they gave. Some Blacks got important big-paying jobs in white businesses or governments. Sure, we have our Colin Powells and Oprahs, but the Black masses were left behind. So you see, integration came at the expense of the Black community. Now things are worse than ever, homie.
Wow. The thing is, Dr. Claude, man, in pointing out this stuff, as we move through this, what we're actually going to see is Dr. Claude, and you and I, man, we love to talk about this, but Dr. Claude is a person that is like a true doctor, a medical doctor. What I mean by that is most doctors have been trained because of the financial benefit to treat symptoms. They understand by treating symptoms that they can make you feel better, but you'll be back because the root cause has not been dealt with. And that's how this whole social culture in the US is. So when you talk about the gains in civil rights, what he's trying to get you to understand is the reason we lost that battle, we actually thought we won.
Yeah.
But we lost, and the reason we lost is because we didn't have an understanding of the core issues of why we felt the way we felt and why we were experiencing what we were experiencing. And we thought the answer was integration.
Yeah.
We thought the answer was equality. We thought the answer was being accepted. We thought the answer was being included. We thought the answer was being included. We thought the answer was equality. We thought the answer was integration. We thought the answer was equality. We thought the answer was equality. We thought the answer was being accepted. But the answer has never been that. And as we move forward, we will learn that the answer is always within oneself. No matter what you're attempting to accomplish, the answer is within you. It is always being able to take a hold of the mechanisms that you have control over. In this instance, economic empowerment. We left our businesses when we moved into integration. We moved into a society that says we only need you as employees, not business owners. That started the unraveling of the foundation we actually already had in place.
But you know what? The thing is, man, I've been, for many people, I think, believe that I've been overly critical of the civil rights movement because oftentimes I've spoken very, very openly and honest about my views on the civil rights movement. Because it seems like, even before I began to read Dr. Claude, it seems like there was always a piece missing within the movement. It always seems like something was being left out. And one of the issues that I always had, Rick, was it seems like we were begging people for acceptance and to be a part of something. That the reason why we were letting them sick dogs on us and, you know, and hose us down and beat us and spit upon us and all throw us in jail, all those things, was for them to like us. You know, and I'm always feeling like, damn that. But as I began to research and study more, yeah, that was part of it. And that was the part that we were shown and that was given to us. But there was other aspects of the civil rights movement. I say this, integration was such a horrible, horrible thing towards the Black community, man. For Black America, rather. Integration has never benefited Black folk.
Right.
It's never benefited us. So share your thoughts on that, brother.
Man, I agree. I agree 100%. It's funny that I want to touch on something that you said that I don't think that very many people caught on. You mentioned it in part one as I examined and went through that, you know, and that's why I said, man, I really want to get in on this one because I see where you're going with this, and I think that it has immense potential to really reach people and touch people. And so we're going to get behind this and we'll do whatever it takes to do to make sure what you're doing is successful in every aspect. But something you said, by the very nature and social, I guess, condition, you started out to say it negatively impacted the Black community, and you corrected yourself. And you said Black America. And that, again, is something that comes from Dr. Claud Anderson, that there's a difference between a neighborhood and a community. And we'll learn that, but that's extremely important. So what I would like people to understand as we move forward is to understand the difference between a neighborhood and a community as we move forward, to start picking up on the difference of the systematic mechanisms and levers that have to be in place, or elements that have to be in place to constitute a true community that can function and thrive within and of itself, being autonomous. But when you talk about integration, and I'll keep this brief, when you talk about integration and its impact on the Black community, I don't think there are too many things over the last 60 years that we as a community, we as a Black people have moved toward that has been more devastating to us than integration. Integration was us seeking. A lot of people don't get, when we see mass media showing pictures of Dr. King and the civil rights movement, we get the "I have a dream" speech, and we get all of those things, but we don't get to see the laments on tape that this man spoke on openly concerning where he was in the last 6 months to a year of his life, where he starts to talk about things like, we have fought hard for integration, and I believe we've won, but I believe we're integrating into a burning building. And he lamented it. And then it's funny that when he moved away from integration and acceptance and equality and started to talk about economic empowerment, he was assassinated. And it was that in alone was extremely symbolic. And that's one of the reasons that Malcolm X preceded him. One of the reasons that Malcolm X preceded him in being assassinated. The reason that the FBI, CIA, all who knew what was going on before it happened, allowed it to happen, was because he always talked about economic empowerment. He always talked about leave the commingling alone, leave the fight for integration alone, and start worrying about empowering ourselves economically. So integration, what it did is it allowed racist America, white supremacist America, to rape and pillage our talented tenth. Those who, people look at in the anomalies, quote unquote, of Black America, and they see the CEOs, the affluent millionaires, and they look at it and they say, okay, well, you look at them, pull up yourself by your bootstrap. Well, first of all, they didn't do that. What happened was, white America said, okay, we are being pushed against the wall for integration. Let them integrate. We will take in their top 10%, put them under our control, take care of them nicely, but the top 10% is not an anomaly. The top 10% were our leadership. They are gifted. They were the leaders. They were the ones who excelled. They were the ones that were supposed to pull everyone along with them. But when they removed them, they left a bunch of people behind with no direction. And so integration started raping us that way. Integration put us in a position that we took on a mindset of employee instead of entrepreneur. And through that process, we never continued our process. We were on a process of owning things. And if you don't own anything, you never really truly in the game. Yeah. You can fight all you want to, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. But the bottom line is, you have to have ownership. You have to have economic empowerment. And what we did when we integrated is we split ourselves up. We diluted our power because we spread ourselves out. We came out of our communities and integrated into theirs. Now we don't have any collective power in any one position because all of our people who have any type of influency are separated. So integration is still ripping us, still raping us, and still tearing us apart.
And you know what happened too, man, is one of the things I liked about that particular segment in the book was how he dropped certain names, and he dropped the Colin Powells and the Oprahs. And you alluded to it when you mentioned the bootstrappers. That is probably those people right now, man, the bootstrapping people. Now, let me give you the definition of bootstrapping that I think Rick also touched on, would be those people who, in their thinking, in their mentality, with their success that they have, believe that they are the responsible agent for that success, that they have done all of the work to get to that successful spot. So what they do with that mentality is they take that mentality and look back and down on those who are not where they are and judge them and say, if you work as hard as I do, if you sacrifice the way I did, you can be here. Don't worry about the dominant white society. Don't worry about white supremacy. They didn't stop me. They took on an individualistic mindset and don't realize that, yes, you may have gotten your success, but no one has ever gotten success exclusively on their own hard work, sweat, and tears and blood. It don't happen that way. Somewhere along the line, somebody has helped you out. Somebody has. So that talented tenth now, we can say now, Rick, the talented tenth in Black America now would be celebrities, athletes, other entertainers. So that speaks volumes, man, of how white supremacy was able to shift our focus from being on our own issues to now focus on elevating people who are just going to entertain us. So we get mad now, Rick. We get mad when the rappers, the singers, the actors, the celebrities don't speak on social issues. Or when they do speak, they say something stupid and ignorant. We get upset. We don't understand that those people have no identity with us. They don't identify with us. They don't give a rat's behind about us. So I don't get mad when Young Thug and all these other nitwits say stupid stuff about Ferguson and other places. We place unrealistic expectations on these entertainers and celebrities, thinking that they are going to somehow identify and all of a sudden going to run to our aid and help us out. They're looking to make money off of us the same way these other folks have made money off. So I no longer get mad at Michael Jordan, who makes shoes, you know, that he's made 20 years ago, brings them back out, sells them for $150 a pair when it only costs them under $5 to make. And Negroes are standing in line to get them. I don't get mad at that no more, because I think that speaks more about the conditioning of us who stand in the line than the conditions of those who have us standing in the line. I think there's a little bit of a difference there.
Right. I think that first and foremost, that goes back to what I said earlier. And when I'm dealing with my clients, when I'm talking to them about empowerment and next level living, the constant in the entire process of me counseling them is for them to understand that the common denominator, the common factor in their life has always been them. No matter how many, for women, no matter how many men have abused them and mistreated them, for men, no matter how many issues they've had and struggled with racism in the workplace, or even with non-black clients, whatever you've dealt with are the circumstances of life. Those are the issues of life. Those are the vicissitudes that come into the lives of every person on this planet at some point in time. What separates those who elevate themselves versus those who remain on a level of mediocrity, complacency, and what I call base level living is the acceptance of responsibility for the things that they control. And so when you come to this situation, when you really look at it, you can get frustrated at Michael Jordan because of his exploitation of black people. But what you have to understand is he doesn't have a responsibility, a sense of responsibility to the black people in this country. So you chalk that up to the game. But what I do look at is the black people who are being exploited, your responsibility to yourself and to your family and to the future generations is not to be exploited. Your responsibility is always to live at the level of your design. And your level of your design is quite nice. If you look at the situation that we're in, over 60% of all inventions that you look at in the history of this country come from the minds of black people, but they have been taken and exploited. So we have a level of creativity that it surpasses any other people on this planet, but we're not using it, or we're using it at such a low level. So when we look at, again, Michael Jordan and anybody else that exploits black people, because I look at a situation where we have coming up in 2015, we will have reached $1 trillion in buying power. The problem with the $1 trillion in buying power is that it is not aggregate, meaning that it is not concentrated and focused on a particular goal. It has no particular purpose. It's individualism, which also integration created. Individualism of a person feeling like, see, that whole bootstrap mentality is an individualized concept. It means that you go out there and do it. But see, we were never designed that way. If we go back to our history, even the villages work together in a unit. There's a reason that the saying said it takes a village to raise a child. It's because the village worked as a group. Everybody came together. They were called either, they were called tribes or clans or whatever you want to call them, but they came together and they worked in a common purpose. And when a greater purpose arose, one clan would connect with another clan and create a covenant and make their power stronger instead of fighting against one another. You can look at who is the greatest enemy. I don't really cut for you, but we have a common enemy that we can't of ourselves defeat, so we come together and collectively we move against the enemy and we defeat them. The problem is we have so much separatism that integration has helped create that we cannot come together. And so I don't look at Michael Jordan. I look at every black person in America that's contributing to the $1 trillion in spending power that we have, and saying if we concentrate that, if we focus that in vertical group economics within the black structure of America, we can create businesses, we can finance businesses, we can open our own banks on a national level and not only compete here in America, but compete globally. but it comes from the base foundation of a grassroots movement in which we determine that it's more important to be economically soluble than it is to be accepted.
And that's a good point, man. Great point. Let me read this part right here. We have more killings and crime, more school dropouts and drug users. Integration killed our communities. This section, man, I highlighted twice because it just blew me away, and it made me sit back and think and re-examine some things. We have no black economic structure to solve the problems of our community. Our black churches and families are weak and struggling. We have yet to gain control of our communities and our destiny. And this is one of the things that he does a lot, that compare and contrast aspect in the book. The Vietnamese, Koreans, Indians, Iranians, and Mexicans are putting up profitable businesses in our neighborhoods. We are still hopelessly vulnerable to every danger, from police brutality to violence and poverty. The next time we go to the Supreme Court, instead of integration, maybe we should seek separate but equal. And again, the key point is where he says, we have no black economic structure to solve the problems of our community. But then he paints the picture of how other races, ethnic groups, cultures, whatever you want to call them, have come into our community and set up shop and just murdering the game economically, and are bringing their cultures into our community and just ciphering out every positive influence that we have and leaving us high and dry, man. So that thought process, when you think of how would, Rick, matter of fact, let's do this. How would having a strong socioeconomic infrastructure prevent crime in a black neighborhood?
I mean, in a number of different ways. First of all, having a strong economic infrastructure takes away one of the foundational elements of criminology. You take any group of people, I don't care, white, black, Asian, and you put them in an impoverished situation, the crime level automatically goes up. There's a direct correlation between poverty, despair, and criminality. So when you start to look at that, the first thing happens is when there's economic empowerment, there's no need to steal. When there's economic empowerment and viable business options, there's no need to sell drugs. When there's an option for me actually to take a legal route and provide for my family in a sustainable way, in other words, to develop and build wealth. See, we're not looking for a mentality of just getting by. When you create a viable situation, you're looking for a way to develop, establish, and sustain wealth. And so in order to do that, you have to have a certain structure, economic structure. So economic viability creates a situation where, first of all, the need for crime is dissipated. Second of all, the opportunity for advancement and success is created. Third of all, you're able to be an influence in the political community in which you can now control how decisions are made on how your area is policed, how different recreational issues and other issues that create juvenile crime, all of those different areas. So there are a number of different elements and aspects that being financially or economically viable helps to address. And I mean, number one is education. It's so many different ways that comes into play. Number one is we already understand, even in the European education that's being used right now in America, even if we look at that, which is poor at its core, but even if you look at that, the numbers show that an education lessens the chance of a child going to prison, especially a male child. So we understand that if we are able to control the level and quality of education through economic viability, then we lessen the chance of our children being exposed to a criminal environment or a criminal element. So all of those things matter.
And the thing that I think is so important for people to understand, man, who are listening, who've ever lived in the quote unquote inner city, there's three ways that people can get money. It's only three ways that people get money. You either work for it, you can make a crime to get it, or somebody gives it to you. And within Black America, particularly some of our poor, impoverished neighborhoods, there's very little jobs. So you're left with two options. You're only left with two, and that's to commit crimes or have Uncle Sam give you the money by cutting you a check. But with the media, with the white supremacist media, what have you believe is they will have you believe that there's all types of options within Black America, that we are choosing out of some innate, animalistic, evil, vile way to commit crimes and perpetrate crimes amongst one another. What they fail to do is they fail to highlight the foundation that many of these communities have been built on, and that would be a white supremacy infrastructure. But as Rick stated earlier, we're not sitting here, and nor will we ever sit here and place all of the blame on our actions on what white supremacy has built. We won't do that. We understand there's a level of personal responsibility in there, and part of the responsibility that me and Rick has is educating and enlightening people who do not understand the nature of the problem that we're in right now. So I need people to make sure that they're paying attention to that, because it's very important to understand that when you look at a poor, impoverished neighborhood who has a very high crime rate, you can tie that into they have a very poor education system within that community. The job market is scarce. All those things tie in together. So when people start throwing out these black on black crime nonsense statistics, they do that with leaving very important ingredients that contributes to that level of crime out intentionally. Because Rick, we know they want to criminalize us daily. If they can criminalize us, it justifies the way they treat us.
Right. I agree 100%. I agree 100%. I think that the way we need to look at this is, me being a former athlete, I look at things in life a lot of times as being analogous to sports. Whatever sport you may have played, at whatever level you played it at, it creates a great analogy for life. And what I look at is, when I played football, I was an offensive player. I was a kick returner and a receiver. And my job was to get the ball down the field and in the end zone. Now, with all that being said, I put in the work, the time, the energy, the effort. My focus was on doing that. But every time I showed up, there was a team of people on the other side of the line, whose job it was to stop me. I had a state of mind of aggressiveness towards them, but I had no anger towards them, because they showed up to do what they were trained and called out to do. And that is to play defense, to stop me from accomplishing what I wanted to do. And there were times that there were some people who were pretty good at it. What that meant was, if I ran into a situation where there was this one player, or if it was in track and field and there was this one sprinter, or whatever the situation was that caused me problems, I couldn't get mad at them because they were doing a better job of stopping me from doing what I should be doing. I had to go back to the drawing board, elevate my game, get back in the gym, get back in the track, improve my workouts, also get in the film room, improve my studies, whatever it was, whatever the situation in life. But it was up to me to find a way to overcome the obstacle in front of me. That's life every way you look at it, no matter what you're going through. When we as a people look at this situation, white supremacist America is real. White racism and the systematic way in which it's executed in the process of oppressing and holding down blacks for the sake of maintaining wealth, power, and position exists. The thing is, we have the intellect, we have the creative mindset, we definitely have the perseverance. We've been going through this and still standing. So we have all of that. So it's up to us to walk away from the victimized role. It's up to us to walk away from pointing out excuses. Do we need to acknowledge that exists? Yes, you always need to know where the source of your strain and your stress is coming from. But once you understand and discover where your strain and stress come from, you start moving in manners to relieve that stress. If the man's foot is on your neck, you find the manner in which you get the foot off your neck. You don't spend all your time complaining about the pressure. You find a way to relieve the pressure. When group economics is sitting right here before us, when the acquisition of property and economic viability and financial fluidity is right in front of us, and all we have to do is seize it, we can stop pointing the finger at anyone else except ourselves.
And that kills it. That kills it. And that's one of those things where we have to continue to teach these things, man, and have these discussions, because understanding the nature of the problem is so vital and important, man. And this is one of the things that Dr. Claude says. He says the root of the problem within Black America is not teenage pregnancy, drugs, the decline in family values, anger, rap music, unemployment, or even an epidemic of violent crime. These are only symptoms of a deeper problem. And it goes back to what we've been talking about. The root problem in Black communities across America is race and the unjust distribution of our nation's wealth, power, and resources. And this is when we have those discussions with white folk and they have a hard time understanding what we're saying. When we say the white privilege aspect, this paragraph right here speaks volumes to them. One race, the descendants of white Europeans, seemingly has checkmated blacks' efforts to improve themselves. Whites live in privileged conditions with nearly 100% ownership and control of the nation's wealth, power, businesses, and all levels of government support and resources. White society has a monopoly of ownership and control. We don't own and control anything. Nothing. Now, we may have some talents, Rick. We may have some talents cornered. We may be the best and excel at some certain talents, but tangibly, business-wise, power, wealth, and resources, bro, we broke. Intentionally broke. It's not from a lack of effort. It's not from a lack of desire. It's not from a lack of want. It's because the way the game has been set up, and the nature of the problem is we are so economically disadvantaged intentionally. Because, Rick, for the most part, man, I know people who, unfortunately, Black folk, who believe slavery was all about skin color. It was because you were Black was the reason why you were made a slave.
What we have to understand, man, first of all, and I definitely want to touch on that. What we have to understand, first of all, is this. Slavery was always about race, not color. And people don't understand that that's actually different. Black has become associated with race. White has become associated with race. But actually, race was all about finance. It was about money. It was about a race for economic superiority in the West. And so that's where that term came from. It was groups of people who were looking to establish themselves in the Americas and to set up and do it. And they were being financed by different European nations to come over and do that. And so it was a race for superiority. It was a race for superiority in the sense of economic superiority, so it became the race. Well, then at the bottom of the race were the people who they built the superiority on, which were the black people. So we became the black race. They became the white race. But understand, it was always about money. It was always, and it will always be about money. Everything in this world is ran on money. It's that simple. And those who fail to understand that, they think it's about morality. They think it's about a number of different things, but it's not. It's about that. It's about race. I'm gonna tell you something. This is the reason why we struggle. You alluded to this point. This is the reason why we struggle in that area. We even when we grasp the need for economics, we're sitting in an individualized mindset or concept. We think along the lines of ourselves, where they actually still function, and every other group functions with a group mind concept. In other words, Asians stand with Asians, Koreans stand with Koreans, Chinese stand with Chinese, Japanese with Japanese, whites definitely stand with whites, Hispanics stand with Hispanics, and even though they may have their subcultures, Mexican, Puerto Rican, Dominican, all of that, when it all comes together, it comes for a political agenda. They come together because they understand the strength in numbers. This is where we differ. Look at the situation going on right now in Ferguson. Right now, you and I are part of an organization that we're pushing to raise money to accomplish some pretty awesome things on the behalf of our people, to pull our people together. And you know, like I know, we're struggling to get people to give because they don't have a group concept. Yeah. Everybody's looking at what the next person is doing and why the next person is doing it, and don't come together. Yet, here we go. We have Darren Wilson, who murdered a young black man, and he's raised over $500,000 because white people came together and decided to give. And it's not because, and this is what I can tell you. People are saying, well, white people have more money to give than blacks. I can guarantee you, when you break that down, just understanding economics and how that system works, I can guarantee you that the white people that gave were the poorest of the white people. Yep. Those are the white people who, the only thing that they got to identify with worth anything is being white, meaning that they have privilege just because of the color of their skin. So now what we look at is they've been able to raise money. And the reason, I'm telling you like this, check this out. Not only are they coming together to support Darren Wilson, it's the reason why. If Darren Wilson would have shot and killed a white kid, they would not have came together to defend him and give him this money. It's saying we're going to step up and defend him because a black group of people are moving against him. So we're going to come together to his defense, even though we know he did something wrong. If he did it to anybody else except a black person, we would have strung him up ourselves. But that's the difference. If you want to look at the problem, that's the difference. They think as a group, every other race thinks as a group. We think individually. We can never build economic power no matter how many. That $1 trillion means nothing as long as it doesn't become aggregated.
And right now, man, I don't think people realize, brother, how dire a situation black folks are in today. I'm 40. I don't remember times being as difficult or as dangerous for us in my lifetime. Now, we done had some issues in the fast, man, where people were going through different issues and so and such and such. But right now, it is incredibly crucial. It's not a week that goes by where something is not taking place against us on a level, whether it be violent in the criminal justice system, whether it be politically, whether it be in the medical aspect with the Ebola virus. We are at a war that it seems to be the only people who are fighting that war, brother, are the people who are awake. It seems like everybody else is asleep on these matters, man. And we've gotten such a post-racial, colorblind mentality, which is an absolute travesty and flat-out BS, that I'm at such a loss sometimes, and I have to sit back and take a break from dealing with other Negroes who, for whatever reason, choose not to be involved with the struggle or want to somehow integrate into the dominant white society as a way of not having to take part of the struggle. But what I stand is, I would rather separate from all of y'all. If you're not going to be for us, then you're on one of two places. You're either a suspect or you're a flat out enemy. You can't, and the problem is so deep. And this is one of the things that Dr. Claude says about the monopoly aspect of the dominant white society. He says this monopoly of control resulted directly from centuries of abusive exploitation and expropriation of the labor of darker race, Black Americans of African descent. Though Black Americans reside in the richest nation on earth, their standard of living is comparable to that of a third world nation. You mentioned that $1 trillion buying power that we're going to have coming up soon, and this is what he states. Blacks own and control less than 2% of the wealth, power, and resources of this nation. So they have very little control over their lives and conditions in which they're forced to live. And that blows my mind. We have $1 trillion worth of buying power, but we have less than 2% of power, wealth, and resources.
Wow. And he's been, and the crazy thing is he's been preaching this for so long, and the numbers haven't changed. That's disturbing to me, in the sense that this knowledge has been readily available. This man has been preaching this for a very long time, and we're still sitting at the exact same place. And what he means when he says that you have all of this money, but you really truly have no control over the wealth, is money in and of itself isn't the power. It's the concentrated movement and the flow of the money that creates the power. If I take all of the money that's being spent, but it's over here and it's over here, the other problem is it's no power when the money flows through your hand and then it flows immediately back out into the hands of those who look to oppress you. There are two ways that economic viability works in the behalf of group economics. To create and generate economic viability works on behalf of blacks. And that is like, and the first way is it empowers blacks. It gives blacks the financial resources that they need to create their own economic infrastructure through which they can become autonomous, meaning that they can support themselves and sustain themselves without ever having to encounter or interact with white America. Right now, even with the money, we don't have that because there are just certain things we don't have access to. We don't have an established infrastructure in agriculture, so we can't produce our own food. So if you think about it, if we really got into a real situational showdown with white folks right now, they could starve us out literally in a couple of weeks because we really truly have no access. We've created no infrastructure whatsoever. Now, that's one side of it. We really don't have anything that we created on our own, but if we had it, that's how one way we can empower ourselves, one way we can create power for ourselves. The other way that you create power for yourselves, and very few people ever realize this, it's not only in amassing power, it's in weakening the enemy. When you practice group economics, you take your dollar out of the hands of the person that's oppressing you. Now you weaken their economic structure while empowering yours. You start to rise while they start to decline. That's the power of practicing group economics. That's the power of economic viability. You have a two-headed monster working on your behalf. But you have to really look at where we're at to understand just the dire circumstances we're in, the dire situation we're in right now. If we don't start to move soon and this thing elevates, we're in a stranglehold. They can treat us the way they treat us because we have no alternatives.
And they do it all the time, brother. That's why they're able to get away with all these things that they get away with. Because you have no power, wealth, or influence to change the dynamics of your situation.
Right.
And I think that the part that we often discuss is the mentality, the conditioning of our people to run, when we get some change, to run out and support other people who don't give a rat's behind about us on any level.
Right.
Outside of us being a doggone consumer, outside of us coming in. So they'll market all of their goods for us to come in and give us their money. But you never hear of white folks getting up in the morning, on Saturday morning, to go shopping in the black neighborhood.
No.
But when we get paid, the first thing we want to do is we want to get up, get dressed, leave our neighborhoods where there may be a few black businesses and go spend our money somewhere else with some other people who don't give a rat's behind about us.
Right. And the thing is, we've actually been conditioned to do it to the point that it's automatic. It's a part of our nature. It's something that we actually aspire to do. We think spending money in the Louis Vuitton store brings about us a certain point of status, but we really truly have nothing because we own nothing. We continually make them wealthy while making ourselves poor. When you look at the situation, understand something. The most affluent and powerful black community in the history of America was in Tulsa, Oklahoma, more infamously known as Black Wall Street, in which they had infrastructure in which I think it was 36 square blocks within Tulsa that they totally owned and controlled. They functioned within that. Now, if we understand group economics, you look at Asians and whites as a general rule, separating European Jews from that and putting them in a separate cipher. But if you look at whites and Asians, Hispanics, they bounce the dollar in their communities a minimum of 9 to 12 times. Before they ever spend it outside of their community, they circulate the dollar in their community 9 to 12 times. Now, Jews circulate their money, their dollar, in their communities through their hands up to 17 times before it comes out of their community and moves into the hand of anyone else. In other words, they elevate, empower themselves, and build within themselves as long as they possibly can before they ever step out. And when they step out and spend outside of their community, it is because they are actually in need of something that they don't have within their community. And what I can tell you is the reason that they're able to do it 17 times is after realizing a certain amount of times that there was something in their community that they didn't have, that they were going to need they were going to have a consistent need for, they use their economic power to buy it. So now I don't have to go outside of my community anymore to buy it. Here's the problem. Our dollar stays in our community 6 hours. Now, when you go back to Black Wall Street, they bounced their dollar 36 times. That's economic power. 36 times before that. In other words, I read once that the dollar stayed in Black Wall Street for a year before it ever left. You got to know, first of all, you zapping the power of those around you who would look to oppress you because they can't get your money. Second of all, you're empowering yourself by investing in things that you don't have so that you do have.
And you know, when I begin to think, man, and the more I wake up to where we are as a people, and the more I begin to continue to study and research our history and all those things, it troubles me now when I look at how we are in such a codependent relationship with people who don't want us to be equal. And the mentality for us oftentimes is that we work so hard to try to be equal with them. Your oppressor is never going to want the purpose that they're oppressing to be on equal footing with them. It's never going to happen. So let's take, for instance, when we just begin to try to support other black businesses and other black people, we have to make sure those people that we are supporting are on the same page as we are. And what I'm saying is every black business is not going to be somebody who gives a rat's behind about black people. There are black businesses out there and black business people who are out there simply to make a dollar to take care of their own folk, to take care of their own families. But the mentality that we're trying to convey to people is We want you to move away from that individualistic mentality and move and begin to operate and work with a group think mentality. That if I begin a business, what can my business not only do for my family, but generations coming in my family and also in my neighborhood? What type of issues and what type of things can be resolved through me opening up a black business in my neighborhood?
Right.
Then begin to think about the black businesses that we do open up. See, we don't need more liquor stores. We don't need more restaurants that serve foods that are detrimental to our health. We don't need more renter centers, errands, things along those lines in our neighborhoods. We don't need more lottery spots. We need things that are going to be able to, A, be profitable, B, is going to be prideful, that are going to match our morals and values. We have to begin to communicate that with people. And I really need us to start thinking about some of these black people that we are supporting and understand that because I go see Denzel do his thing in Equalizer and I support and I enjoy that movie, yeah, Denzel is getting money from that movie. But the people who own and distributed that movie, are the people who are getting the money. Okay? So we got to make sure that we understand that and get rid of that mentality. I wish and push for people to own their own distribution companies when it comes to entertainment, not just aspire to be athletes and actors and entertainers, but aspire to be producers, distributors, job creators instead of employees, right?
I agree 100%. That's a mentality and a mindset. The first thing you said, I'll iterate one more time, I'll reiterate one more time, and then we'll talk about the mindset of entrepreneurship. First and foremost, it's extremely important to understand that we have to take on that mindset. We have to take on a mindset of understanding that the strength and the power and the influence is in ownership. It's not just in the gift of being able to get money. It's being in the gift of being able to control situations that generate and create money. In other words, there are so many different things that our gifts and our talents are being exploited for the sake of other people making millions. People think because of our mindset, first of all, our individualized mindset and our circumstantial and social and environmental mindset in which we are relative in our thinking, we look at athletes making millions of dollars playing sports as something spectacular. They've made it, they've done that. No, actually, they're just a higher paid crony, honestly, that is being exploited by white supremacist America, because what we don't understand is anytime, one thing I tell you, everybody needs to understand the value of their self, whether you're an employee or an entrepreneur. But as an employee, you have to understand the value of self. Anybody that wants to pay you 6 figures, anybody that wants to pay you 7 figures, is definitely making 7 to 8 times more than what you're making. In other words, nobody ever pays you a certain amount of money to make less amount of money off of you. So if they're paying you a certain amount of money, you can guarantee that they are making a lot more money. Now the thing is, they are paying you because you're gifted, and if they're paying you well based on your relative thinking, then that means you're very good at what you do. So why isn't it that you can't pool your talent with other talented people that look like you, that face the same challenges as you, come together, pool your money, and create a situation to become an owner of a franchise, to a sports franchise, to become an owner of a bank, to become an owner of a Fortune 500 company, and use your talents to do what you're doing for someone else for the black community. That's it in a nutshell. When you sit up and look at it, in other words, if I'm gifted enough for you to pay me this amount of money, I'm gifted enough to step out and do it on my own.
And that's one of the things, Rick, that we're striving for, man. We got about a minute left in this particular episode, brother. I just want to say a couple of things, and then I'm gonna have you close out. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to continue walking through this book, man. Black Labor, White Wealth. And in the next portion of the book, is still in chapter 1, you're going to hear him explain exactly what slavery was and what slavery wasn't. So I encourage you guys to continue to stay tuned, man, to check us out and cop this book. Study it. Read it with your family. Read it with your kids. It's a very vital resource that everyone should be reading. Go ahead and close us out, Rick.
You know, as we leave, man, one thing that I would leave with everybody is that we need to stop. We need to get rid of the bootstrap mentality. We need to get rid of the individualized mentality, the integration and the acceptance mentality. We need to come together and understand the power of unity, the power of group economics, and learn how to stand together for one another. We need to be able to support one another, even if we can't see the vision, as long as we're supportive. Again, we don't support every black business, but we support black businesses that are going to positively impact black communities. And when we do that, we'll start to see that the power, there will be a shift in power as we begin to come together collectively in an economic sense. So that's what I have to say, man. I appreciate you having me on. We got a lot of work ahead of us. I look forward to working with you. Let's make it happen.
Till next time, family. We out.